Well, here's an air pistol that needs no introduction. Welcome back to Canic Air. What I have here is obviously a Webley Junior, although a little bit different than the Juniors that I've seen before, although that has not been very many, I'll admit. This model plays a pretty big role in my history of air gunning, in that my dad used to have one when he was a teenager, and it was long gone by the time I came around. But he certainly praised how amazing his little Webley Junior was. All steel construction, very well made, precision rifled barrel. He had a lot of fun with that gun, and he really missed it. And I think that's kind of what led him to quickly purchase Webley Senior when he had the chance many years later. But the Webley Junior was something that lived on in mythology for me in some ways. But a friend of mine called me up one day when I was a teenager and said that his cousin was visiting from out of town, and he'd brought along an air gun and a Webley Junior. Would I like to take a look at it and have some fun with it? So I went over and met my hero, I suppose, which you should never do, I suppose, because the gun was in pretty sore shape. It was rusty, bluing was missing, but it wasn't a very pretty gun. Like, this weird shape in here was kind of clumsy, I thought, and it was a smoothbore. My dad had said his was rifled. Was my dad mistaken all those years ago? It turns out no. The more I kind of learned about these guns, they did in fact have them as a rifled option when my dad would have got his. And my grandfather would have made sure to spend the extra money to get a rifled barrel if it was available. This one, however, this one is a bit older. This one does not have an adjustable rear sight on it, which is something they added in the early 1950s. This one is nickel-plated, as you can see. It has the extended grip here, which comes forward a little bit. They only used that in the late 1940s, apparently. That's all according to Dennis Hiller's book on air pistols. And he has a fairly extensive bit of information on Webleys of all kinds, and the Junior, of course, is definitely an interesting model. They're quite collectible. Anyway, I never had one myself, and then I had a chance to pick this one up. It's in fairly rough shape. It is nickel plated, which, according to Hiller's book, was an extra cost option. What did that cost you back in the day? It cost you 5 shillings, which was a crown. That's the coin that went along with 5 shillings, or you could have 5 quarter-shaped coins, each worth 12 pence apiece, but this was a crown. This one's 1889 and Queen Victoria on it. Pretty old. But it was that was a fairly substantial amount of money. Think what a silver coin this big costs you nowadays, especially if you buy them through those collectors, sort of editions that the mint puts out every now and again. They're fairly expensive. Also, 5 of these made up a pound, 1 British pound, which also at the same time was a gold coin called a sovereign. So it was a fair bit of money to spend to get this thing nickel plated. Somebody made the expense, though. But anyway, let's take a closer look at this Webley Junior. Presumably from the late 1940s. Could be into the 1950s. I'm not sure when they stopped doing this, but definitely the rear sight being just a fixed notch on the frame. That's kind of a giveaway that it is an earlier gun. Another thing that you might notice is the front plug on the barrel here. Let's see if I can focus on that for you. The front plug is blued. The rest of the gun is nickel. What does that mean? Is it possible the gun was nickel plated at a later date? Well, if that were true, then you'd also do that piece too, wouldn't you? It'd be ridiculous to leave that off. Is it a possible replacement part? Well, if I take the grips off here, we have an assembly number, 4468, and the last 3 digits on this are 468. So the parts match. I can only assume either that Webley just did that on purpose. I don't know. Has anybody else got a nickel-plated Webley? They can tell me where the front plug is blued or nickel. Or is it possible that somehow during the production, the front plug ended up in the bluing tank by mistake and should have gone to nickel, and when the parts all came back together again, it's like, well, just put it back together again and off you go. I suppose that's quite possible. So what is a Webley Junior? Well, if you think it means that it's a, smaller, more petite gun intended for a younger shooter, then you'd be exactly right. Because the Junior filled the hole in the lineup below the Mark 1. The Mark 1 was Webley's original pistol. There was a Mark 2, but that morphed into the Senior in the later years. So the Senior was above the Mark 1. The Junior was below the Mark 1 in the hierarchy of things. The Junior is a fairly small air pistol. If we take a look at Hiller's book here, well, this is a Crossman 2240. Just fits in the frame nicely here. That's a fairly, good reference gun because, a lot of people are familiar with this one. A Webley Senior Webley Senior is this one here. And you can see it's a little bit bigger all around than the Junior model. And the Premier Mark II, which dates from the 1970s, with an alloy frame, pretty much the same footprint as a Senior. But if you look at the Junior, you'll see that it fits entirely on this book. It's quite small. It's also, what you probably can't appreciate is how thin it is. The grips on it are quite narrow in comparison. It is definitely designed for a younger shooter, a younger hand. Everything's a little bit smaller, more petite, but especially in the width dimension. Even the cocking linkage is fairly thin. But then again, there's a lighter weight spring in this gun, so. So anyway, now that I've got this, I have a Webley Junior. What to do with it? The nickel plating is in pretty shabby condition, especially on this side. Pretty deep pitting here. Maybe it doesn't come through on camera, but it looks fairly rough. I'm inclined to want to refinish it a fair bit. See if we can remove some of this pitting and replate it, since I've learned how to nickel plate with some success. So might want to do that. I know there's some urge to say, well, it's a collector's item from the 1940s. It's an unusual gun and it's nickel plated. It has the extended grip, so why not leave it as is? There's definitely an argument to be made, but I think I'm a bit disappointed in its finish here and there, and I think it could be improved. It's hard to know what to do, but I think I'll probably go ahead and do the restoration on it. There's some other things that need to be attended to. There's some really nasty sharp burrs on some of these screws here that need to be looked after. And I haven't taken it apart. I don't know what condition the piston seal is in, or even the breech seal. Don't really know. I have shot it, and it does shoot. That breech seal is synthetic, which means it has been replaced at some point in its lifespan, because originally these would have been leather. They were a leather one with a brass tube up the middle, and Webley eventually just went with a synthetic seal and said, yeah, replace them with that. There's a bit of rust coming through here, and it definitely needs a good cleaning up and looking after and see what it does. First thing I'll do, though, is fire it across the chronograph and see sort of what velocities we get, just to give it a bit of a baseline and see whether we're going to, what we're going to expect out of it. So let's do that next. Okay, let's see if I get at least 5 shots over the chronograph to give us a baseline of how this gun is doing as it came to us. Going to use the RWS Hobbies here because they're fairly lightweight pellet, only 7 grains. So for this gives us the best opportunity going speedy. .236.5. Sound awfully loud. .242. 260. $244. $256. So this time with the chronograph, I'm going to try 3 different pellets. I'm going to start off with the QYS training pellets. These are a little hefty, about 8.2 grains, but we'll see how they do. .210, so a bit slower than what we were seeing last time, but that stands to reason given the heftier pellet. There's also a good chance that as I shoot this gun a bit more and more, it'll pick up a little bit of speed as the parts bed in and the lubricants settle down. Yeah, 210 again. These Webley Juniors are supposed to put out about 280 feet per second with some unspecified pellet back in the day. Of course, that would always be the most optimistic results from the best performing gun. They probably, in reality, did a little bit slower than that. And we can't expect too much of them given the it's a pretty small spring, pretty small piston, and a pretty small gun. So, and it was designed to be easily cocked by a younger shooter, so you couldn't put the strongest stuff in these things. Going to try here the JSB RS, which weighs 7.33 grains. These are a dome pellet, and usually do pretty well in most guns I try them in. Yeah, 240, so that's picked up a little bit of speed. Yeah, very close to that. These are extremely consistent, aren't they? They must fit the bore pretty well. .4 feet per second extreme spread, average of 239.4. Yeah, that's pretty darn good. I go back to using the hobbies. These are a light pellet. About the only downfall I see of these is that they do seem to have a bigger spread on them than most pellets I shoot. So. Yeah, 220, so that's a bit slower than the first time we tried these. .229, yeah, so up nearly 10 there. .216, yeah, okay. .233. .335. So, yeah, probably not the best pellet for the gun. So here I am back at the range with the refurbished Webley Junior. Let's see how we can shoot with it. only going to shoot one kind of pellet today, the RS Diablos from JSB, which I figure seem to be the best fit for this gun at the moment. And I'm also going to compare it to the Webley Premier Mark II, the one I refurbished some months ago. So just because I haven't shot this one in a while, and it'd be kind of fun to compare. This should be no contest. The Premier should blow it away, but no, let's see how well we can do. So this is cold weather shooting again. It's very cold outside, a bit warmer inside the range, but maybe not warm enough. I didn't bring a thermometer with me because some things are best left not knowing. But here we go. I'm going to shoot 10 shots with this Junior at this target. I'm aiming, I think, pretty much about center hold, so it's shooting a little bit low. I've got the sight, the front sight level with the top of the rear notch, which given this gun has completely fixed sights, not adjustable at all. This isn't too bad. If you're shooting a tin can at this distance, which is 10 meters, if you aim at the top edge of the can, you're going to hit it every time. So this isn't too bad. I ended up with a 2-inch group on that. 51 millimeters, so that's actually better than I thought I would with a smoothbore gun at this distance. And I switched over to the Premier Mark II. And first off, you notice it punches neater holes through the target than your Junior. With its slower velocity, just tears the paper a bit more rather than cut it. This gun's obviously shooting a little bit high and to the right. Can always adjust those sights. And the trigger was surprisingly light. A couple of times it went off a little earlier than I expected, so that may have affected the group a little bit. May have to adjust that to be a little bit stiffer. The Premier Mark II is adjustable, so that's something worth considering. My fingers also getting pretty darned numb in the cold, so I'm glad 10 shots is all I wanted to do on this one. Ended up with a 43 millimeter group, which is about 1 3/4 inches, so a tad smaller than what the Junior could do. So not that mind-blowing. This is a Webley Hurricane compared to our Webley Junior. The Hurricane is about the largest of the British-made Webleys. Not going to include the Turkish guns that came later. But yeah, very small, petite little gun. And quite happy to end up with a Junior in my collection. I've been looking for one for a while, and this one is not one that I expected to find. Nickel-plated one was, kind of interesting. As for the restoration, was able to get some of the fine, got rid of the rusted pits out, and not completely smooth surface. Sanding it down a lot further would have taken some of the markings off, and again, we're not trying to make this thing look brand new. It is, after all, nearly 80 years old. Wow, that's kind of amazing. So yeah, the new coating of nickel on it will at least protect it for another few decades at least. And now we know it's shooting decently well, and it's going to be a lot of fun plinking away with this thing in the future, I think. At some point, I might have to go on the hunt for a Webley Mark I. It's something I haven't come across lately, so that would be kind of cool. But yeah, I finally got a Junior in my collection, and kind of looking forward to shooting it in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching. Consider subscribing. There'll be more fun stuff to come on Canic Air.